I'm DJ Diya Anantharaman, music director and radio host of An Earthly Machine at KUCR Riverside 88.3, and I'm here with John Dufalo, also known as John Buffalo. John released his self-titled album in November of 2023 via State Fair Records. We have convened today across time zones to chat. Good afternoon, John. It's lovely to see you. How are you doing on this fine May afternoon?
Great to see you. I'm good. I'm sweating a lot. I'm in Fort Worth right now. I live in Dallas, but I'm in Fort Worth, and it's hot, but I'm good. It's good.
Yeah, it's awesome. Let's start from the beginning. I did some digging and learned that your artistic origin story stems from playing makeshift drums with Bongo Joe Coleman in your hometown of San Antonio, Texas, and then progressing into joining bands and writing music, eventually relocating to Dallas. Can you tell me a little bit more about your musical background and how it informs your artistic philosophy to this point?
Sure. That's cool that you found the story about Bongo Joe. So he was a fixture downtown in San Antonio, and that's where I grew up. And at one point, I was really young, and my parents had taken my family downtown for something, and I heard this guy. He actually would whistle and beat on trash cans, and he was kind of San Antonio famous downtown, and he'd always been there. And for some reason, like I was drawn to it immediately and wanted to stop and listen. So my parents were like, okay. And then for some reason, he's like, hey kid, and he like motions for me to go play with him and hands me some drumsticks or something. And I'm beating on these trash cans and just thinking it was the best time of my entire life. I was probably 8 or 9, and maybe younger than that. I don't know. But it just immediately made this impression on me of like, this is the coolest thing I've ever experienced. From then on, I was obsessed with drums. I started finding things in the kitchen to beat on, just whatever it was. And it's interesting because by the time I ended up, maybe it was like 4th grade around then that I got an actual drum set, but I'd been playing on things around the house so much that I would say I was good, but I definitely felt like I knew what to do with it. I was kind of already imitating things. So I grew up obsessed with drums and played drums for, I didn't play guitar or write songs or do any of that till I was in my early 20s. So for a long time, I was just, or not just, but I was playing drums and obsessed with them, and mostly informed with punk rock. I loved late 70s punk rock. And so that kind of, to me, I thought of it very much as freedom. Like there's no rules, you don't have to be technically, like to me, technical ability is great, but it's to me secondary to ideas and creativity and that kind of thing. So that kind of helped me when I first started playing guitar and writing songs, because I thought, well, there's no rules. So this is kind of wonderful. I started playing drums in bands around San Antonio, and when I was probably about 18, 17, and the bars figured I was old enough to be in them, and I wasn't, but so I was kind of getting away with something there too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool. I know a lot of this album is very mechanical, featuring a variety of synth and electronic drum sounds. I love the variety of grooves on this project with layers of percussion and almost robotic vocal elements. Can you tell me a little bit about your creative process on John Buffalo, along with its sonic and emotional landscapes, and how they show up through some of your songwriting, vocal, and instrumental choices?
Sure. So this one was kind of a left turn unexpectedly for me. I'd always been, like I said, I started as a drummer, ended up playing guitar, writing songs. I had always been very informed by punk rock and by garage rock and 60s, British Invasion kind of stuff. And had played in bands and still play in bands that are that kind of thing. But what happened was I was recovering from a surgery, and it was a long recovery, and I wasn't really allowed to. I had a quintuple bypass, so I wasn't allowed to pick up anything over 5 pounds for 3 months. And I was like, the only way I'm going to get through this is if I can make music. And now I can't really play guitar or drums or any of the things that I usually do. So immediately I kind of went into this mode of like drum machines, synthesizers. I'm gonna, go down this road. I had already been experimenting with that stuff a little bit before, so it was sort of like the obvious green light to like, okay, here's the direction I'm going to go in. This is what I'm going to do while I'm recovering, and try to write some songs about my experience in the hospital and what it feels like to have made it out the other side. Luckily that I got to leave the hospital. So it was really cool because it's not really my world that I know about very much. So I was going through and finding drum machine sounds that I loved and synthesizer sounds that appealed to me. The only rule I had for myself with the project was I didn't want to buy any kind of new toys or gear that would make it sound really modern, or I know so little about that world that I kind of didn't want it to be whatever's trendy right now. I didn't want it to fall into that kind of trap of like, well, what's popular right now, I'll emulate that, because I just thought that would probably not sit well with me in a few years. So I kind of just gravitated towards, a lot of people say, oh, it kind of sounds a bit 80s, or it sounds a bit, like lo-fi even. But I just kind of kept messing with it until I found sounds and things that, made me happy, really. And it was fun. It was a fun process and I'm glad you pick up on, because it started as just synth and drum machine, but then I ended up putting some percussion here and there, and definitely I was using an old it's called a micro Korg. They have a vocoder on it. I was using that a lot, which is really like, I mean, it's like $100 keyboard. It's nothing fancy at all. But the vocoder on it, I liked quite a bit. So I kept kind of recording and seeing what it would sound like if I mixed, this sort of robotic sounding vocals with my real vocals, and and that sort of experiment was really fun. So
yeah, I love hearing about people using the vocoder, the Korg, the micro Korg. I feel like that's just kind of like a weird piece of gear, and I love just hearing about people's like niche picks. That's really cool.
Oh, it's totally weird because you feel like you're supposed to be singing into it, but really all you have to do is sort of speak the words and play the notes. I'm sure you know how they work, but I'd never really messed with one, and it's fascinating because I kept wanting to sing the part, and you don't necessarily have to do that,
Yeah.
It's cool. They're amazing. And it's funny that it took me this long to kind of come around to experimenting with that kind of thing, but I've been on other paths. So.
Yeah, we did previously touch on you being in some bands as a part of your creative history. How would you say the music on John Buffalo is influenced by your past involvement in projects that include but aren't limited to the Death Ray Davies, the Apples in Stereo, and your score for the documentary 35,000 Watts, The Story of College Radio?
Oh, right. So I feel like about half of the songwriting on the new record is kind of the traditional thing that I've always done, which is a very sort of pop structured, verse, chorus. I love, really catchy melodies. I love. I am definitely not scared of that side of things. But the other half, I was trying to branch out, and so instead of writing the way I usually do on guitar, piano, or whatever, where I would, come up with chord sequences and try to melody around it. With this record, I'd start with a beat, and then there's songs like "Who's Got a Lighter," "I Got This Now." There's a song called "Moo" that I would just start with a beat and just see kind of where it took me. And it was interesting because to me, it ended up going in places I'd never tried, or it sounded much different, and it was a bit less traditional, from what. When I joined the Apples, I loved. They were one of my favorite bands ever, and fortunately, they were fans of the Death Ray Davies, so that's how they ended up getting a hold of me and asking me if I wanted to play drums for them. I definitely learned a lot being in that band. Robert, the singer, is to me like a master of pop melody, and he's just incredible. So I kind of learned a lot from him. But at the same time, I used that, but then I also was, wanting to branch out and try things. And at first, when I did, actually the two songs I named, "I Got This Now" and "Who's Got a Lighter," I didn't think I was going to show them to anybody. I was not embarrassed of them, but I thought, oh, this is a little too something for me. And then the more I kind of listened to him, I liked him and thought, well, why not? You know, there's no reason not to. You know, there's no downside to this. And a bunch of the songs were written directly about kind of the experience of the hospital and what that was like. And you know, there's one that's called December 22nd, which was the day of my surgery, and it's all just about that. You know.
Yeah. Some of the songs in this album do remind me of, as you said, 80s new wave, more so industrial actually to me, with the clunky drum beats and the angular electronic soundscapes, coupled with your vocals, as well as the vocals from June, your daughter, on some tracks, the medical themes of the music.
Yeah.
There's June.
Hi, June. The medical themes that chronicle your experiences with recovery and bypass surgery go hand in hand with the ways you had to adapt to making music, turning to more electronic instrumentation. I love how this album is simultaneously minimal, detailed, and expansive with its production. And I'd like to know about some of your main inspirations. And this could be, again, more artistic, such as other music, media, literature, or film, or it could be more thematic, like spiritual occurrences, religious epiphanies, your experience with recovery, etc.
Gotcha. Lyrically, I was of course, more than affected by, this near-death thing. So around the time I was really focusing in on this record, I was kind of just, euphoric. I was elated that I was alive, it would kind of, without getting, myself back into that place, but it was just every, sort of like the cliches they talk about, like every leaf and every, like it was all super hyper surreal at that point, just that I was around and I was getting to experience another day. And so there was that, but then there was also kind of things that I wanted to, I do a lot of music for background stuff for television, for movies, things like that, like the documentary you were talking about, I scored that, but even more so with the TV stuff, I'll do sort of a lot of soundscape things. And so there's definitely, if you listen close, there's lots of background type sounds and sound effects and things that I was trying to create moods. There's one called Year One that's an instrumental, and it's just kind of based on the way I was feeling and how it felt to, it was like, oh, this is, I get another life. This is year one. This is day one of year one of my life, and it just kind of, I was trying to express that.
Yeah.
So I guess that my sort of past work with TV and soundscaping and that kind of thing played into it more than I thought it would, Other than that, oh gosh, I don't know. It just kind of came together like it did. There's one song, the very last song on it, was actually not from part of this project. There's a movie, pardon my language, June, called House, and it was an indie film by a guy named Cooper Rafe, and he asked me to do a song for it. This was a couple years ago. So I wrote a song called Why Are You Lost? And it never appeared on any of my records or my band's records. And I liked it enough that I decided to redo the song and do a drum machine synth version of it. So that's the last song, which has nothing to do with, any of the rest of the record or anything. But I just felt strongly enough about it as a song and thought it'd be a cool closer for the record. So that one's sort of a weird standout on it. But I'm glad it's there,
Yeah, I am interested in the album artwork. I'm curious about the cover photo and if the building it was taken in front of has any significance.
Actually, yeah, the first trip that I took after recovery, after I was getting kind of clearance from doctors to like, okay, things are looking good. You're good. The first trip that I took, I'd never been to Mexico City. And so I went on a vacation with my wife and with June to Mexico City, and it was the very first day we got there. The very first moment we got a place to stay, and right across the street from the place we were staying was the building it's actually, I was the one who took that photo. I was actually just so happy I liked the building, and I thought it looked cool, and I was just excited about being in Mexico City and about the vacation. And I didn't think about it. I just took out my phone, and every once in a while in my life, I'm not really a big selfie guy. I don't do that. But every once in a while, when I'm feeling particularly like overwhelmingly happy, I'll just take a photo of myself. And I did in that moment. And I didn't even look at it. I just kind of went on, you know, we went on with the day. And then later I was looking through photos and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I'm not even all the way in the photo, you know, I just got I got the building mostly in the top of my head. But there was just something about it that, you know, that not only did I like the photo, but it also kind of signified that I was, you know, had this new chapter. So.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. I'm also interested in the music videos in this album. I love the homespun quality of the video for Accidents, and I know your daughter June was part of the process for that.
She made,
yeah,
and sang on the song.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I asked her if she wanted to help me with some video, and we kind of talked about it, and she said, well, I can draw some things on my iPad, and we can, you know, it'd be fun to do sort of a little scene of all of, you know, and the joke about the song Accidents is that if I actually wrote about all of the times I've been in the hospital and all the accidents that I've had, it would be a very like long, you know, 20-verse Bob Dylan type thing. But so we just picked a few. I wrote the song, and then so she thought it would be funny to draw out a few of the scenes. So yeah, when she finished it and we kind of put it together, I was just like, oh man, this is perfect. And I also think that with my music, not just John Buffalo, but the Death Ray Davies cliffs, there's always, I think there's always been an element of kind of homemadeness, for lack of a better way. I think that's what you just called it. I kind of like music that's that way, that feels a bit like, it feels more personal to me. And I think that I've done plenty of, I record and produce other people's music now, and I've done plenty of records that aren't that and sound bigger and more, you know, whatever you want to call it, produced. But for my own music, I don't know why, but I always kind of gravitate towards having it be a bit more homemade sounding. It just feels right to me to do it that way. It feels more honest, or it feels kind of more personal, like I said. Yeah. So I'm glad you like the video.
Yeah, me too. I get what you mean though. It's just closer to the heart. And the video for I Got This Now features trippy split screen editing and more tongue-in-cheek footage. Speaking of which, can you tell me a little bit more about your choices to include the more tongue-in-cheek footage in your music videos and how they function in tandem with the album's themes, maybe?
I think that just kind of comes down to, I don't always take myself too seriously with these things, and I'm not ever trying to come off as like some cool rock star type, you know. I just I think I would have a problem trying to, you know, be that person, because I'm just not. I like you know, kind of the same as in the style of recording. I just sort of like to keep it, you know, honest and personal, and so I'm not afraid if I look, you know, a bit goofy or whatever it is, you know. So that's why June actually helped me make that video as well. And so a lot of ideas and a lot of things I usually bounce off her. She and I have a very similar taste, and I trust her taste. She's 13, but she's already got a great eye. She's already like has, and thankfully understands me and what I'm doing. So I'll be like, is this, do you like this? Do you like that? And she's kind of helped me along lately with a lot of sort of things like this. All of the photos and all of the art for this John Buffalo stuff she took. And so, and it's great because obviously around her, I'm as comfortable as I could possibly be, which, you know, makes it easy. You know, I've done work with other people where I didn't know them very well, or, you know, and then I get a bit stiff and suddenly I'm trying to look cool or whatever. And it, you know, doesn't always come out, you know, I'd rather it just be natural.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk
Yeah.
gear. What would you
Oh,
say was the most essential piece of gear to the particular sound of the album John Buffalo?
oh, interesting. So when I say drum machines, it's interesting because I'm actually, that's a simplification. What I did was I went around to a bunch of different drum machines, and I never programmed any beats or anything. What I would do is just find all of my favorite. I have this little library of all my favorite snare sounds and all my
Mhm.
favorite kick sounds and hi-hat sounds, and you know, you name it. And some of them come from old uh old school drum machines. One of my favorite is actually, I have a it's an organ, it's a 70s organ as a Baldwin, and it's called the Fun Machine. Have you ever heard of
Mhm.
that?
I don't believe I have.
So the Fun Machine is amazing. It's this organ I've got. It lights up. It's really, it's just, and it's got the greatest sounds. In fact, I've made a whole instrumental record called the Fun Machine just
Mhm.
using this thing. But it has a built-in drum machine, and so I sampled every sound on the built-in drum machine. So a lot of those are from the Fun Machine,
Mhm.
and some of them are combinations of that drum machine mixed with other sounds that I found that I like. There's even some timpani on some songs. There's some samples of. So what I would do is just kind of put those together. I'd pick all my favorite kind of sounds for things, and mess with it a bit, and go from there. The main synthesizer I used were, I guess, two of them. I've got an Arturia that I like. None of them were like plug-in things. They were just physical, you know, actual synths that I plug in. I have a two Korgs that I like. And then a bunch of the sounds, strangely, I have three different toy, basically Casios from the
Mhm.
80s that are like, you know, $30 keyboards that are, but they have these weird sounds in them that I can't find anywhere else, and they're
Mhm.
amazing. So I'll kind of play something through this sound, and then kind of mess with it a bit, and you know, I'll, you know, try delay or try reverb or try, or sometimes they're just perfect on their own.
Yeah.
So a bunch of the sounds are actually, yeah, from just old beat up Casios that I found along the way, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
lastly, if you were stranded on a desert island and could only take three pieces of gear with you, what would they be and why?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I'd have to consider the fact that there's no electricity on the island. But either way, it would absolutely be probably a floor tom would be one of them. I just even when I'm playing a full kit, I'm always on that floor tom.
Mhm.
So that'd be one. Another would be, I have a Gibson classical guitar that I write most of my songs on and play constantly. That'd be number two. So floor tom, classical guitar. For some reason, I've never really been drawn to like a traditional acoustic six string. I always like the classical ones. They're a bit warmer. And if you
Yeah.
really bang on them with a power chord, it kind of sounds punk rock on them. They sort of distort in an interesting way as well, just naturally. Let me think. Number three would be hard. Okay, so number three, I would take something I don't know how to play so I
Mhm.
could learn and give me. So I guess number three would be like something weird, maybe like a French horn,
Ooh,
uh,
okay.
something like something like that. So I apparently I'd have, you know, maybe some time on my hands, so that'd be my choice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I feel like I've learned a lot about just the inner workings of this album and where that came from holistically, whether it be your recovery or just, I guess, the wonderment of coming to life after something like that.
Right
Yeah.
on. Yeah, yeah. Thanks. I'm glad that I'm here to talk about it and write about it, and yeah, I'm glad you like it and that, you
Yeah.
know, it resonated with you. That means a lot. Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for playing the songs.
Yeah, absolutely.